All right, welcome back, everyone. Welcome back to another episode of the I Didn't Read Your Book podcast. Today, we have a very special episode. I found this book on the Cast Castle vlog, that of one Tim Pool, you may or may not be aware of, and you may or may not have heard me talking about him before, but he is my, among many, my main news guy. That's where I get my information from day to day. Got a lot of sources, but Tim Pool is at the top of the list for me personally. And he has a blog channel where they just kind of, film stuff that's going around the compound that they have, and just kind of creating culture outside of just political punditry, if you want to call it that. And so sometimes they will do fan mail, openings, and they got a bunch of packages, and they opened one up, and it was today's book by Blaine Pardoe called Blue Dawn. And I didn't even recognize the play on words until somebody, I think it was Tim, maybe somebody else in the video, was like, oh, like Red Dawn. So I'm guessing we are the fact that it is a blue versus instead of Red Dawn, and the fact that I saw it being sent to someone who I go to for politics, I'm going to assume that it has something to do with politics and to do with the change in our culture and how the left side of things have not been well received by some people. Again, I haven't read the book, so I don't really know, but that's what I get from just the cover and the name. I'm for it. So let's dive right in and read the back of the book. Almost 5 years ago, America, as everyone knew it, came to an abrupt end in a spectacular coup d'etat. It was called the Liberation by those progressives and radicals that screamed for its outcome, the fall. No, it's by screamed for its outcome, the fall by its victims whose freedoms were trampled. The White House and the Capitol were overrun by anarchists, and leaders of our once proud nation were either imprisoned or sent to social quarantine camps. The president was arrested and eventually died in prison, or so everyone was led to believe. America was rebooted in a new progressive socialist image, New America. The United States of old was gone, its history erased and rewritten, its icons destroyed. By the time people tried to organize resistance, it was too late. The citizens lost their history, their flag, their traditions, their freedoms, and their leaders. New America is a state of reparations, citizens turning on citizens, where even the churches are targets of social justice. 5 years later, an unlikely group of patriots emerges from the shadows, seeking a restoration of their nation. Two Secret Service agents struggle with their secrets from the night of the fall. One son of a patriotic college professor struggles with his father's legacy and the important artifacts that his father managed to preserve. A young man finds himself face to face with the lies of the New America government. Comes face to face with the lies the New America government has told him and forced him to become a fugitive. A covert operative of the new government seeks out the truth about the traitor president's fate while coming to terms with her own dark past. Twists of fate or destiny bring these people together with a mission of trying to save what is left of the once United States. Time is running out as the forces of the government hunt down this group of renegades, hoping to smother once and for all any trace of what was America. Ripped from today's headlines, best-selling and award-winning author Blaine Pardoe presents an eerily realistic view of an alternate history political thriller where conservatism is a crime and patriotism is treason. So, that was intense. I don't like the sound of where that was going. And I think that is a obviously hyperbolic and exaggerated, but very accurate view of how a lot of people see what the current trajectory of our politics. That seems to be where people think we are going. Personally, I see where I see that. I see how I see the pathways for that. Do I necessarily think that the United States as we know it is going to fall? I would love to say no. I'm not going to say yes. I don't think it is definitely going to fall, but I do think that we are in a precarious position that if we keep going the way that we're going, that we can cross certain lines that can't be uncrossed. I think we're operating right now in this this kind of gray area where things are heading in not so great of a direction, but things also aren't so far gone as they seem to be in New America. So I guess the biggest question is, what are number one, what is the core problem with progressivism and wokeism and all that stuff, which I assume Blaine is talking about here, and two, what do we do about it? And I certainly don't know. I have always done my best to speak my truth. Ugh, I hate that I just said that. Speak what I see as the truth, and try to report reality as it is. And not that I'm a reporter, but when I talk about things, I like to I don't like to engage in bad faith conversations just because it may not adhere to what I believe and what is going to make me look good. There's a lot of times I don't know what I'm talking about. And if that's the case, then I'd rather listen and learn than try to force in, a square peg in a round hole just so that my worldview can be preserved. And, I used to think that wasn't really something to brag about, but as time goes on, I'm seeing more and more often how, not everybody approaches things that way. And some people really are willing to just, let the core values that we have erode in service of what they see as a greater good. And I think there's always been people like that, and it's always been questionable whether that greater good really is greater. So I guess we'll get into all of that. And without further ado, let's bring in Blaine. All right, and welcome to Blaine Pardoe. How you doing today, Blaine?
I'm doing well. How are you?
Very, very well. Well, not as well after reading what is apparently going to happen to this nation. It was a bit alarming reading the back of your book. As I was saying in the reading the back of the book segment, I definitely see where this type of thinking comes from, and I definitely see how somebody could think, oh, this is definitely going to happen like tomorrow, kind of thing. And it doesn't seem like from reading it that is your position, that this is a story and that this is a sensationalized version. But it also does seem to be a very real warning. So I guess my question to you is, how realistic do you intend for this story to replicate real life?
Well, I had a friend of mine, when he went through the book, he said, gee, we're only 2 bad days from this actually happening. And in many respects, that's true. A lot of what I pulled from the book, I really pulled from contemporary media sources. And I simply amplified those or went with them as they were presented. The concept of a nationalized police force, for example, is something Barack Obama floated as an idea at one point during his tenure as president. The concept that there was going to be retribution against Trump supporters is something that AOC made very clear, in her efforts. So, yeah, a lot of what's there is based on actual premises that politicians have floated or other people have floated, and it's simply provided in a more narrative, digestible format. I think writing at this time in history of a nonfiction version of what things might look like under a progressive state or a socialist state is very difficult to do, because for every time you present a fact now, somebody's got three counterfacts. And it doesn't matter what side of the fence you're on, by the way. This is, bipartisan in terms of, the fact is there are no facts anymore. And so to me, I thought it was more interesting to actually just do what I enjoy doing, which is writing a fictional story. And this is a fictional story that
For now.
leverages some of those components and tells them in a way that people can engage with. And I think that's healthier that way. It's a little bit more digestible for people, and it backs away from your natural defenses where you want to argue the point, and you start just dealing with the characters and what they're going through, etc. So for me, that's been the real fun of it, from my perspective. I will say that not all people have drifted into that. I've had people refer to this as, this is Proud Boy porn, which I didn't even know was a thing. And I don't, I had to look up what the Proud Boys were, even, just so that we're all clear. I'm not like some crazy political fanatic, but I follow politics because it's entertaining. At the same time, I've had people go, this scares the hell out of me because it seems pretty realistic and it seems like this is something that could happen. That's good. That tells me I've gotten close, and it makes it so people can engage with the characters, I think. So
Interesting. And so I think that, to exactly what you're saying, the fact that half the people see it as the liberation and half the people see it as the fall, I think is just spot on. And how long ago did you write this?
I finished the book just prior to the election last year.
Okay.
So it was, it was a little creepy about certain aspects of it. I actually have an attack on the U.S. Capitol being done by a progressive mob, an Antifa group swarming the Capitol, and it to the point where my publisher and I were even communicating, going, like, this isn't some publicity stunt that's unfolding on TV, right? Like, you're not doing this. Like, no, I'm not anywhere near DC. What happened there was a national disgrace more than anything. We could spend hours arguing whether it was an insurrection or an intrusion or whatever, but I'm a historian, so I tend to poke at things from that perspective. But it's pretty accurate in terms of some of the things that unfolded. There are obviously some things I took some creative liberty with to kind of set the stage for this universe.
So, and again, going back to that idea that this is all very scary, and as time, I mean, it would be very scary if you had written this, say, like 10 years ago, and now we're seeing like all of this play out. So the fact that you're not yet that prophetic is a little bit optimistic.
Yeah, well, the political pendulum swings both ways. We've seen that recently with the election in Virginia. That and I live in Virginia, and the pendulum can swing both ways. But it's interesting to watch how the rhetoric ratchets up on these things, and a lot of people can't distinguish anymore the difference between a piece of fiction and a true political piece. I've had people that threaten. I had a person that threatened my life over writing this book, and it was before the book was even out. They hadn't read the book. They saw the cover of the book And that triggered them to where they issued death threats and threatening, videos to me and things along those lines. I had to get the police involved. I had to get a protective order. In a million years, writing a piece of fiction, I never anticipated that. Now, I've been threatened before because I write true crime books.
Mhm.
I've had death threats before. I have sat across from killers and had interviews with them. I'm not unprepared for that when I'm working on true crime. And true crime, you have to do it because we work on cold cases, my daughter
Mm.
and I. So
Oh,
when we were working on a book, you're mentally kind of attuned to the fact that the killer is still out there. This is
gotcha.
represents a threat to them. They're going to respond. Totally agree with
Mm.
that. Understand it 100%. It's very different when you're working on a piece of fiction and somebody goes, I haven't read the book. I don't know anything about the book other than what's on the back cover. And I'm so upset I'm going to threaten this person. That was startling to me. But I've kind of come to the realization, talking with a number of people, that I really shouldn't have been shocked by that as much as
Right.
I was.
Yeah,
That this
I'm
is
not shocked
now,
hearing it.
yeah, this is now the culture. And anybody that doesn't agree with the wokeism movement is a target. And that target, everything is fair game. They don't care if they're threatening you, your wife, your dog, whatever. They don't, it doesn't mean anything because the ends justifies the means. And
And how do you the disparity between I don't even know if it is left and right anymore, and it's more more like liberty versus authoritarian. But there was always a divide, there was always a left and a right, but it hasn't been until recently, maybe the last less than 10 years, where this ratcheted up level of intensity and specifically in involvement in violence has become so boilerplate, and just this is how things need to be done. This is justified. The ends justify the means. All of this kind of stuff. The first time I really remember it becoming like a mainstream thing, I think, was around 2016. That guy Richard Spencer, who's like a real avowed white nationalist, and like he claims to be a white nationalist. And he was doing some interview on the street, and somebody just came up and punched him in the face, and that went viral, and the whole punch a Nazi meme went viral. And I was like, how about don't, like, that's not what we do as a civilized that's what the Nazis do. That's why we don't like them, right? Am I crazy here? And people would just like, no, 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 they're Nazis, so we got to take them down, and da, 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 da. And that's really where I saw it snowballing into everything that we've seen, the Summer of Love riots last year, and just all of it. And
I love your calling of the Summer of Love riots. That's interesting.
yeah,
Last summer was not the Summer of Love.
yeah, and that's their term. They called it. I think was it Kamala Harris, or it was one of those. I don't know.
Yeah.
As much as I like to pay attention to things, I've always been. I've always, well, let me put it this way. Because of the fact that I haven't always been very politically initiated. When I was young, I could see the game. I could see that this was all bullshit, and this guy's a liar and that guy's a liar, and neither of them really care about what happens to me, and da, da, da. So I just never got into it. And I think that's a relatively common position for a younger person to take, like in your teens, early college. I think it's relatively common. But as you get older, then you realize that, well, you can't just sidestep all of this, and it comes to your doorstep. And so if you don't have some level of at least awareness, not even activity, you don't even have to be an activist. You don't have to be, super involved in the goings on, but to at least be aware is something that is becoming increasingly important, because I think the tactic now is to change the language to get anybody who is instead of you have to agree on to be on this side, or you have to agree to be on this side. It's if you don't agree that you're on this side, you're automatically on the bad side. And that's the switch that I noticed around that time.
Well, you know, and I think you're not far off. To me, I always kind of viewed it as the politics was getting worse and worse, and it, you know, people want to attribute to racism. I don't think that was it. I just feel like there was when Barack Obama was elected. My personal opinion was the man was our president. I don't have to respect the man personally. I don't have to even like where he stands politically. I respect the office, and
Right.
I didn't run around saying horrible things about Barack Obama when he was president because I honestly was like, look, I'm going to give this guy the a level of respect he has clearly earned. Whether
Mm.
I voted for him or not, that's where I was. We went to the next election, and I think for me the turning point, there were two aspects in the 2016 election that did it. One was when Hillary declared that anyone that supported Donald Trump was in a basket of deplorables that were beyond redemption. Um, and I think that was a turning point for her campaign to say that, because it was literally drawing a line and saying, look, these
Mm.
people are evil, they're horrible people, they're deplorable people, and there's no redemption for them. So that was stage one. And then when she lost the election, and I've been trying to go through election history to try to find instances of this, and I just couldn't. Uh, Almost always you have a concessionary approach. When you lose, you go, look, it was a hard fought campaign. We didn't win, but I throw my support behind the person in charge. Hillary came out and said, resist.
Russia. Yeah.
She said, resist. And that became the mantra, was we're not going to work together. We're going to, doesn't matter what he's doing. Doesn't matter what the man in the office did. And there was no level of respect for the man, for the office or the man at that point. And we also saw for the first time in our history kind of a weird alliance between big tech, the mainstream media, and the extreme left kind of conspiring to craft narratives, to eliminate narratives from even being discussed, to censor, be it groups of people or others. I think that's bad. When I hear somebody scream Nazi, I had a guy the other week said, "Oh, Blaine Pardoe's a Nazi," and I was like, first of all, you clearly have no understanding of history. Second, you don't know me well enough to know that I'm not a Nazi in any way, shape, or form. And that's one of the things that the Nazis did, is they labeled groups of people and they attached attributes that were negative to those groups of people, be it gypsies, Jews, whatever. The people that tend to scream those labels tend to actually emulate those labels,
Mm. Definitely.
at
Yeah.
least in my experience. And I see it in religion all the time. You had Jimmy Swaggart, Tammy Lee Baker. The people that were the most pious were the ones that were stealing money, sleeping around.
Yep.
It's,
Yep.
the more you thrust that image out there that I'm better and morally superior to someone else, the more I kind of go, you're actually quite the opposite. And at least that's my take on it. I don't know where you
Yeah.
fall with it.
No, I couldn't agree more. Except for the one thing that, when somebody is going to say, Blaine, you're a Nazi. I don't think that I used to think that they thought they would really think that. And, oh, if you have this opinion, you must be you must be a Nazi because of the narratives and all that you were talking about. But I'm getting to a point where I'm realizing that people are not even coming to the table in good faith. And they know that they can't know you well enough to call you a Nazi, but they don't like what you're saying. And so that justifies what they're coming to the table, not in good faith, not looking to learn about who you are, what you have to say, but just to shut you down because they automatically see you as an opponent. And that, I think, is another big aspect, is that people would always disagree, and there was always people who would dig their heels in and have their beliefs, that nobody could convince them otherwise. But again, in general, it seemed like most people wanted the truth. They wanted to know what was going on. They wanted to be engaging with reality. And I see that less and less. I see more and more of an engagement with a perceived reality and this what would be called New America, I guess. And that's why it's so scary. But I'm wondering what you would think of whether the person is acting in good faith or not. Starting all the way back from Russiagate. How deep do you think this I mean, let's just call it for what it is, indoctrination on the left has brought people to a point where they really do believe things that they're saying? And how far has it gotten to people that even if they don't believe what they're saying, they're willing to lie and obfuscate facts and things just for the political win, the political own, the Twitter dunk, all that kind of stuff?
Yeah, it's gotten further than I had anticipated. When I was working on the book, one of the things I did is I went to a meeting and with some young Republicans from a college campus here in Virginia, a very widely known campus. And they were telling me the stories about how they're physically attacked as they walk across campus because they're wearing a Republican shirt or their bag has a logo for the Republican Party on it. People have absolutely no qualm shoving them, knocking them down, spitting on them. They schedule events at their college to have speakers come, and quite literally the people that control the calendar cancel their events but don't tell them, so that they don't have a place to even have their event and such. And when they've had speakers come, they've actually had people threaten the speaker's life,
Yeah,
when
that
they
was
were
a
come. And we're not talking like they're having some crazy lunatic speaker. It's, somebody who wrote a book or somebody who did whatever. I think the level of told me that the level of indoctrination was far worse than what I expected. When I went to college in the 80s, we had liberal professors, but we had conservative professors. So you got a perspective and you were taught how to reason and form your own opinion. In other words, this is data, here's data. You look at the data and form your connection to what data is the most meaningful or the most pertinent to the actual situation. We don't have that now at all.
mm,
It's one side of the story. And if you've got people that are, and these kids have gone up and talked to the school administrators and said, hey, there's a problem on this campus. The administrators look the other way. They're like, well, you shouldn't be walking around wearing a shirt that has the Republican logo on it. Well, you're forcing a level of censorship. And
mhm.
and as a writer, I'm against censorship in a lot of different respects. I've had people, because I write science fiction books as well, they're like, don't write these political things. You can only write this. And it's like, well, but it's a free society. If I want to write this, I'm going to write it. You don't
I'm
have
sure
to
they would
read
have
it.
no issue with you writing the inverse if you were if you were taking the side of the revolutionaries. I'm sure you'd be like, oh
Right.
wow, this is amazing.
And in the book, when you look at Blue Dawn, what really stood out with it is I gave them everything they wanted. They won.
Yeah. Oh yeah,
They
yeah.
have wiped out the opposition completely. They've suppressed it. They got everything they wanted. So that was the starting point of it. And I thought that was a good way to get the reader to kind of go, whoa, this is darker than what I thought it would be. And it's definitely not what I would have expected. And that's what you want to do. But I, I can see where people get upset, but at the same time, I'm kind of like, the name calling, the labeling, it just makes them look stupid, not me. It doesn't make me look bad. People who know me go, that's dumb. And, you know, my lawyers love it because we're keeping track of all of it. And the wonderful thing about the internet is these idiots that do this stuff don't seem to, they all believe they have a law degree. They have an internet law degree, I guess you'd call it. But in reality, you know, the law really is on your side. And I can be a cranky old man sometimes and more than willing to spend the money to make someone's life miserable if they're going to threaten me or malign me, you know.
And that's and again, that's speaks to exactly you know, the type of momentum that is happening. That I'm sure you you know, if it was just one thing out of the blue and one random person was acting, I'm sure you wouldn't necessarily see it as such a big deal. Now, I'm not saying that a death threat is not a big deal, but I mean, I wouldn't see it, or perhaps you wouldn't see it as an indictment of, you know, exactly what you're writing about. Whereas, you know, because of what it is that you're writing about, they're proving your point by doing what they're doing. And
Well,
it's, I don't understand how they don't see that.
what's really funny is, as I said, this was before my book came out. And I've often heard Hollywood folks go, well, there is no cancel culture. This is just the ramifications of your words and actions
Accountability
coming back
culture.
down.
Yeah.
Yeah, this is us just holding you to account. You know, we're doing this. And I'm like, this person went off the rails over a book that wasn't printed yet. They hadn't read it. So how is that the ramifications, you know? And it is interesting, and it's a little dark because they don't see the irony in what they're doing, and they don't see the downside of what they're doing because it's not going back to them. I had this discussion with a political science person I know at a university, and I said, the situation we're in now reminds me kind of prior to 9/11. If you read the 9/11 report, and I'm paraphrasing horribly here, there's a line in there going, is fundamental Islam was at war with the United States for 10 years. We didn't know that until 9/11. You
Mm.
know, they were blowing up embassies. They set off a bomb in the World Trade Center parking garage. We all were like, well, maybe we'll find a way to get along, or, you know, these are just a couple radicals. It wasn't until 9/11 happened that we said, whoa, I guess we're at war.
Mm.
And in many respects, I think there's a war going on right now. And I think half of the country doesn't realize there's a war going on. And they're fighting this war and they're taking it very seriously. Whereas we keep going, maybe we'll find a way to work it out. These things always balance out. Things we'll compromise. And the other side's going, we're not going to compromise anything.
Right. Right.
You know,
And,
this is war, and
yeah,
it's weird.
and exactly what you said about them not understanding the irony. That's what I'm second guessing these days, is that I think they are fully aware that they are being hypocritical, and they you know, are using tactics that they wouldn't accept from the other side. And I think that is you know, I think that's purposeful. And I think they've gotten to a place where, you know, just because they're the right side and the other, well, not the, you know, they're the correct side and the other side is the not correct side, that it doesn't matter. It doesn't matter. You know, we don't have to come and engage with these ideas because they're so bad and they're so harmful that, you know, that we just need to stamp them out. And so what would you say to somebody who, you know, maybe isn't one of these activists who is purposely doing this, but somebody who is, you know, just a normal a normal person who pays attention, but, you know, they've got a job, they've got kids, and they've got a life, so they don't have the time to really dig into these things. So they rely on the same mainstream media avenues that they have their whole lives. And they are by default caught up in that mainstream liberal progressive narrative because of the way it's presented. And then they see, you know, the other side of it from somebody who somebody like you who has been paying attention and looking into these things, and they see what would be on the back of Blue Dawn, and think that maybe it's conspiratorial, and you're the one who's a kook, and you're all that stuff, that what we're doing isn't so bad in this way and that way, and all of these things that have been going on have been shielded by the media, and I think you're right that in saying that most people aren't aware there's a war going on. What do you how do you get through to those people?
Well, people will crack up when they hear this, and please don't judge me for it one way or another. But I do watch MSNBC and CNN. Election night here in Virginia, I watched there. Now, I will tell you, I watched a little bit to see the angst of their defeat. But I do flip on CNN and MSNBC because I don't want to be the guy that's the cranky old guy who sits around watching Fox News or Newsmax, and that's where I get all my news from, etc. So my view is skewed because there's a definite skew to the right as well. So
Mhm.
I vary my diet, and what I'm finding is both sides are a little bit extreme in what they report. So it allows me more thinking about how I can pull toward the middle of all that. You know what I mean? And if I hear both sides of the story, I feel like I can then form my own opinion as to which way to go. I think a lot of people, and I'll even say it's downright laziness. They go, well, I watch CNN and that's all I watch. Well, if you're watching just CNN, or if you're just watching, MSNBC or wherever your media source is, even if it's Fox, you're not getting the whole story. What you're getting is the portion that they believe is supports their narrative. And I think everybody has an obligation to try to watch the other side to go, so what is the other side's view of this?
Mhm.
Because at least if you get the other side's view, you go, okay, I understand where they're coming from.
Right.
I don't have to agree with it. I can at least say, well, this is what they're saying about it. And to me, that's the only way you can do it without dedicating a lot of your life to surfing the internet trying to find valid sources, which they just don't exist
Yeah.
anymore. We've created
That's
a
a good
culture
point.
where there's no source of the truth. When I was raised in the 60s and 70s, we had 3 TV networks. We had 3 TV anchors in the evening that we knew of. Well, Huntley Brinkley counts as 2. But, there was a handful of guys, and very rarely did they impose their politic on the facts. They
Mhm.
reported facts. This is what the president did today. This is what he signed today. They didn't have commentators going, well, here's what that really means. And this is, they're lying about the cost of this, or they don't really address this, this, and this. We've gotten commentators. We have entertainment people who are providing us the news.
Right.
And
And even worse in this day and age, specifically with Biden, they will fill in the quotes of sorry, they will leave it or they will fill in the quotes of Biden stumbling and over his words and put in what they think he meant. And that goes out as an official news story. And so when he's saying, the thing, and we 3 million people, and CNN or whoever it is, all of them, they will do the ellipses with the breaking up the quote, and they'll put it together in a way that makes sense, which could be, it could be seen as legitimately trying to help people understand what the president meant, but it always goes in the direction of what helps the narrative. And it's, I think we're in 2 different realities. There's the people that understand that this is going on, and whether to what degree they believe it's happening, to what degree they believe it's a good thing or a bad thing, and all of that is another thing. But there's people who understand that information that you receive is always going to have some type of bias, and be colored in a certain way. And then there's people who are just willing to eat it up. And if it's in the news, then it must be true. And I mean, it's not even just the mainstream, the cable news channels or anything like that. I mean, I'll commonly listen to, like I've said, Tim Pool is my main guy. I think he is, again, I don't always agree with him, but I think he does a really good job of trying to be, not, I don't think he tries to be unbiased. I think he just tries to put his bias up front instead of trying to act like he doesn't have one. And so that allows me to see, okay, this is what Tim thinks about the facts that he's laid out, and then I can do that as well. But even, it's not just left wing, it's not just progressive stuff. I mean, I like to watch Crowder too, and Steven Crowder, and a lot. It's entertaining, and it can be informative. And there's some things that he does that are real works of journalism that are great. Little things like when he went to some of the addresses on some of the
I
ballots.
love that. I saw
That was-
that episode, and that sucked me in because I was, here's where so and so lived who voted in Arizona, and it's a vacant lot.
Yeah, but again, he'll be and I think for the first time, I did a live stream this week with a self-event socialist libertarian, which I always thought would be a contradiction, but what do I know? And we were talking about these these things, and it's crazy how I lost my train of thought. What was I just talking about?
You're talking about Crowder.
Oh, and yeah. So I'm more of a coming from the left, and on that stream I just did a couple of days ago was the first time I unintentionally referred to myself as a conservative, and I was like, well, I guess I'm conservative now, and growing up, when I was in grade school, Clinton was president, and then we had Bush as I was a teenager, and then when I got to college, it was the Obama years, and so on. And so, Republican and conservative, those were dirty words to people my age, and it was just the default that you would be on the cool liberal side. And I feel like things have been that way since maybe and I mean, correct me if I'm wrong. I like the since around the '60s. That the liberal side was the cool side, and the Republicans were the old fuddy-duddies. And one of the big points that has led me away from the liberal mindset and closer to the conservative mindset is understanding that there more than ever before, there seems to be a bigger disparity from left-wing voters and left-wing politicians and right-wing voters and right-wing politicians than the right and left-wing politicians or the right and left-wing voters. And that really has changed the landscape. And so I don't think being conservative really even means what it did a few years ago. And I don't think I am that. I don't think I am a 2015 conservative. But now, if you're not a hardcore liberal, you're just a conservative. And I'm done fighting that. I'm okay with that, because I don't want to be pressured into taking a side I don't believe in because of a semantic discomfort, with aligning myself with the GOP. And I don't align myself with the GOP. And that, I guess that's my whole point, is that I have more conservative values than I used to. I have more conservative values than the typical liberal. But just like many liberals don't like Biden or Harris or AOC or whoever it is, I'm not really a champion of the GOP. And I think that's it. Is that a newer phenomenon, or has that always been?
It's actually perfectly okay to be whatever you want to be. You don't need the label. The label's almost, it feels like a target at times when you tell people I'm conservative, or And
Well, that's
I don't
exactly why
hedge
I didn't
about
want to
it.
do it. Yeah.
And we had a party this weekend. We were doing a chili kickoff with the neighbors, and somebody said, "So, well, politics, we shouldn't bring it up." And I'm like, I have no problem bringing it up. I'm conservative. I'm not embarrassed about my political views. I don't ever say I'm GOP. I don't ever say I'm Republican. I'll say I'm conservative in my thinking. The GOP's wandered away from a lot of its ideals. I mean, they voted for a lot of stuff during the Trump period in 2020 when they were passing COVID measures that broke the bank that 10 years ago the Republicans never would have spent money the
Right.
way they were spending it fiscally. So they waver
And
from their values and ideals just as much as the left wavers from them. um, it's very interesting to me to watch that dynamic kind of play out. But I agree, there is a schism between where the voters are and where the parties are. And it's pretty big. And I think you saw that with Glenn Youngkin here in Virginia, where, it was interesting to watch some of what unfolded, because this was a slam dunk for McAuliffe. He had been a previous governor here. He was well known on the national stage. This should have been a complete slam dunk for him. And if you had told me 2 years ago that education was going to be a hot button topic that would determine, the
Mhm.
governor's race, not just the governor's race, the conservatives took the House of Delegates too. I mean, this is a big deal. And what I saw was amazing, because there should have been a realization that took place the next morning or even that night with the liberals, where they were going, okay, we need to kind of check ourselves on some of the stuff we've been pushing. They doubled down. They did
Mhm.
exactly what they got upset at Donald Trump for doing all the time, because Trump was notorious for doubling down. They doubled down. The one MSNBC commentator who said that our, assistant governor, was a white supremacist was just ridiculous. I was like, do you not own a television?
And again, that's why it's like, are you really saying these things because you believe them, or are you saying these things for the effect that they're going to have?
I
And
think that they are seriously believing that they get to control which narrative gets spoken. They control the language as it is right now. So if you don't like something, they change the name of what that
Mhm.
is. And so they want to parse it even more and keep the divisions going even more. And it's frustrating. I think people got fed up with it. And I was very pleased to see where education became an issue. I thought it was great that Terry McAuliffe said in a moment, he slipped and said, I don't think parents should have a role in this. And I told my wife, I said,
Saying the
that's not
quiet
out of
part out loud.
context. That's
Yeah.
not out of context. That's what he said. He's saying what he actually believed. And that
Hmm.
cost him the election by
Yeah.
saying that. The others made it very clear by their reactions. Many of them said the same thing, essentially, like, hey, don't go after, AOC was all upset about, don't go after wokeism, as a result of this. We're not woke enough. And I
Yeah.
was like, you got to be kidding me. You're not looking at the results and evaluating them like a conscious thinker. And that's what I think the colleges have missed out on doing, is they're not teaching people to be conscious thinkers, to evaluate, to critically, parse the data, to look at it and go, okay, well, things have changed, so now we need to do X. They're going, oh no, we're not far enough.
Right.
That's the problem. And I'm like, okay, as Napoleon said, never interrupt your enemy when they're making a mistake. And I'm a big proponent of that. If you want to go down that path, go down that path. I think it's not going to help you when you reach, the midterms, which are coming up next year. And that's, there's no way you escape the border crisis during that. There's no way you're going to escape inflation. You can't go out, like we saw the press secretary 3 weeks ago, 4 weeks ago, come out and go, well, maybe the problem with the supply chain is we're just too successful in the stuff we're doing. I'm like, really? You want to go down that path?
And people will believe it. People will
Yeah,
believe it, and because they don't go down that path, they just hear it and it sounds good. It's like, oh, okay, great, and
yeah,
that's where it ends for them.
yeah.
And
It's
so if
something that people have got to get better at doing, one
and
way or the
and
other.
and while that is certainly the case, unfortunately, we seem to be falling deeper and deeper into this mentality that we can outsource our thinking and outsource our values and outsource everything to the state and to the establishment. And it once you are on the side of thinking that your biggest enemy are the voters on the other side rather than the government trying to take away your freedoms, then you are it seems to me you're not too far gone, but you're definitely heading down the wrong road. And so why do you think that if like you said, you gave in Blue Dawn, you gave them everything that they asked for, and it's not pretty. Why do you think that either the people who are pushing for this kind of stuff don't see that this is where it ends up, or why what else they think is going to come from it, if not this?
Well, if you look at
America.
history, from my perspective, I always play with history, and I talk about this in the book. And history always looks at these things as revolutions. And when you look at the French Revolution was, we're going to get rid of the monarchy, we're going to have freedom, everything's going to be, we're going to bring justice to the people. And then they turned on each other. And their whole revolution laid the foundation for Napoleon to come to power and become an absolute dictator twice. And so, revolutions don't have directions, they have fanatics. And fanatics tend to drive those types of things. And I don't think their whole system that they're proceeding with, from my perspective, they have to always have a target. So if you take out all the targets, you have to create new targets.
Mm.
And you have to create new people to go after. And I see that more and more as, when they turned on, the assistant governor here in Virginia and said, well, she's a white supremacist, when clearly she's a black female, who's highly
Black face of
successful.
white supremacy.
Yeah,
As
and
Larry
you
Elder.
realize, like, they literally are willing to turn on each other, right, no matter what, because that's what they do. They're fanatics, and fanatics will always feed on each other. And I think that's going to be the result of where they go. Is their entire approach to things is, we have to have people to be going after. If they got everything they wanted, they'd have to find more people to go after. And that's what happens in totalitarianism and in regimes that operate as dictatorships. They constantly are finding new people to go after. And I think another contributing factor to this is that we've gotten to a point where we're now seeing that people who are victims, are heroes in some way.
Yeah.
And we're shifting, in that case, the moral compass or the values of the nation to go, we should be looking at the people that won in the elections as, hey, they've achieved something, they've done something well, wow, this is respectful. Instead, what we did was go after them right off the bat. They're not to be inspiring, they're not good people. They're constantly trying to find victims, and they take the victims and raise those victims up to be heroes, and it doesn't work. It just doesn't. There are times a hero is a victim, but a
And
hero is.
That's how you get situations like the whole Jesse Smollett thing, where he creates this whole plot, conspiracy, if you will, just to turn himself a multi-million, well, I don't know what he's worth, but a TV star on not even on cable. He's on I think it was on Showtime. I don't even know. I didn't watch them, but you know, somebody who is of, you know, to use their terminology, coming from a place of more privilege than many others, yet he felt the need to do what he did, you know, with his whole fake news attack, and because there is social currency in being a victim,
Yeah.
and it's not a good it's not a good precedent that you know, just by being a victim you get social credit points.
It's not morally centered. The person that threatened my life, I finally did a blog post and said, look, this person that you guys all thought was a 30-year-old lesbian who was in this community of science fiction readers, who was claiming to be a nurse, who claimed to go to school in Tennessee. Okay, this is all a lie. This is a 39-year-old guy who lives with his dad and another elderly member of the family. You know, he's unemployed because he ended up in this situation at work where he issued terroristic threats. I laid all this out, and it was amazing to watch the person online go, oh my God, these are transphobic attacks. And I can't believe this person attacked me. And I spent 3 or 4 months of this person sending me death threats and, you know, sending me the most vile messages that you could imagine, you know, via email, and trying to post them on my blog and going after my fan base and attacking them, etc. And the first thing this person did is, I'm a victim here. And I was like, that's when it really clicked with me that these people, their sense of reality is so skewed. They don't understand, like, there's ramifications for things that you do. And I think it's this generation of kids that got their freaking participation trophies every time they went. They were, their parents have told them everything that comes out of your mouth is just golden and the world should bend to fit you. And you know, if the world doesn't bend to fit you, you call me and I'll get involved. And I left the corporate world 2 years ago when I went into retirement, but even then I was talking to recruiters who are like, you're not going to believe this, but parents are showing up at kids' interviews. Parents are involved, and I'm not exaggerating this.
That's a good
Parents
look.
are involved when we call to make an offer to hire someone. They're getting involved because they're like, I'm going to negotiate for him. Well, how are you preparing this kid for the real freaking world? You know, you're not.
Well,
And
and
it's
that was
bad.
always what I thought when, you know, right around 2017 we were talking about, you know, speakers at college, and that was really the height of you know, the on campus hullabaloo over speakers, you know, your Milos and your Ben Shapiros and not even that conservative other speakers. You know, just that if somebody was scheduled, then, you know, automatically at Berkeley of all places, which is supposed to be the bastion of free speech, you know, you just had an unwavering you know, adherence to this is hate speech, or this, you know, to even allow this person to speak. It's not like, you know, everybody's forced to watch it. This person is coming and they're going to be on stage and you can go or not go. But just by letting that happen, that is akin to violence, and therefore we are justified in meeting that with kinetic violence and actual violence. And I no longer think that, or rather, yeah. So I was thinking like, oh, ha ha ha, these kids, you know, these snowflakes, when they get into the real world, they're gonna da, 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 da. Lo and behold, they get into the real world and they brought that with them. And now it's not just on the college campuses. Now that these people are in the workforce, they've brought it there. And the tactics that they use are so insidious that, you know, a small group of people have been able to take over the culture because of the way that they use the language in ways that we've seen in history so many ways before. I mean, it's almost cliche at this point to talk about 1984 and George Orwell and double speak and all. It's almost cliche because it's to the T what they're doing. And if you bring that up again, you're seen as some alt-right conspiracy theorist. But It's like that is what is happening.
Well, it's not just what they tell us, it's also the things they don't tell us. And this amazed me. And this occurred a few weeks ago. Katie Couric came out and said, and it was announced that in her interview with Ruth Bader Ginsburg, she edited out a question that she had asked of her about Colin Kaepernick. And Ruth Bader Ginsburg said, I don't think he should be kneeling. I think that's wrong. Well, Katie asked the question. So she, as a reporter, had enough sense to know I need to ask this question. But when she got the answer she didn't like, that didn't fit the liberal narrative, she cut the question and the answer out of the interview that was aired. And we, everybody kind of points to, Hunter Biden and all of that. And I think that's a good textbook example, but it's these little things that are being done. There's a lot of people out there that idolize Ruth Bader Ginsburg. So why not let her opinion be known on that particular point? And if you're saying it, Katie Couric's argument was, well, I didn't think it was important, and it painted her in a bad light. Well, who are you to be her press agent? You are supposed to be a journalist.
That's for us to decide.
Yeah, at any point in history, let's say the 1970s, Katie Couric would have been fired as a result of this. It would have been that, if you thought it was an important enough question to ask, you air the answer in the question. That's it. Your journalistic integrity is shot. She didn't get fired. I doubt she got reprimanded. Other than
good job.
Yeah, and when we saw this with Brian Williams as well, he blatantly lied on multiple occasions about things. Nothing, he ended up suspended with pay. I always dreamed about being suspended with pay.
You took the words right out of my mouth.
I don't have to work and you're going to still send me money and I have benefits. Awesome. Where do I sign up for that?
At the welfare office.
Brian Williams retired and everybody was like, oh, he's really going to be missed. I saw this on Twitter and I'm like, the guy lied twice. He should have been gone years ago for what he did. When he got caught with his lies, he should have been let go. And I think there's a level of things that they're telling us, and there's also a level of things that they omit from telling us. And I've been watching a little bit on MSNBC and CNN. I've been looking for what's going on with the border crisis. I don't see anything. I turn on Fox, it's on, there because it fits their narrative, but it's like, it's one thing to go, look, we're going to play it, but we're not going to give it a lot of time. But it's another to just go, we're just not going to talk about it because then it doesn't exist.
And to that point, it would be if the liberal narrative doesn't agree with how let's just say that the liberal narrative obviously doesn't agree with how Fox News is presenting it, so they're not going to present it in the same way. But by not talking about it at all, when they've shown to be willing to completely again obfuscate the facts and twist things and make it look any way that they want, it almost makes you question, well, how bad is this really, that even they can't twist this and make it into something that is, somehow Trump's fault, or somehow conservatives' fault, or somehow, something that is good, that it's not a crisis, that it's in fact something. They've been known to do that with so many things, more things than not lately. And so that's an interesting an interesting point about omission, when they are so willing to lie, commit lies of commission, that to omit something really says a lot on its own.
Well, and it was interesting, and I include this in the novel when I was working on Blue Dawn, and I've included it in all the sequels as well. There's a thing called the TRC, the Truth Reconciliation Commission. Because AOC proposed this. She goes, what we need is a committee that can review facts and determine what are the real facts and release that. So I was like, fine, I'll give you what you want. I'm going to have this Truth Reconciliation Committee. And you can only believe things that have their logo on it, that they've reviewed and certified. Yeah, that's a level of government overreach that I never thought in my lifetime I would hear a sitting member of Congress propose, that we need a government body to determine what the truth is. And that it's creepy. It's very creepy.
Yeah.
So in many respects, these guys helped me write the book. They did a wonderful job, and they're continuing to do so, because I'm working right now on the fourth book in the series. So they
Good
keep it
content is
up.
good.
I'm gonna they keep feeding me stuff. God, Afghanistan was wonderful.
Yeah, I mean, let's dive into that, because I'm sure we have very different perspective, maybe not different perspectives, but definitely different experiences of the that whole thing, the whole Afghanistan war. Because I was in sixth grade when 9/11 happened. I was in my Miss Schmidt's social studies class, and they were they weren't playing the news, but they were talking about how something has happened, and kids were getting called out of the out of class and being brought home, but we didn't really know what was going on. And it wasn't until later, when we got home and we could actually see what was going on, that we actually even understood that something happened. And so that was, sixth grade, you're what, 11, 12 years old.
Yeah.
And yeah, so in September of 2001, I would have been 11 years old. And then, that's where the whole thing started for me. And then it was just a couple months ago when it quote unquote ended, when we got out of the extraction from Kabul. And it's just crazy to think that at 30, I'll be 32 this month, and legitimately 2/3 of my life has been in this war, and it just seems like nobody is willing to hold anyone else accountable. Not only is not anybody willing um to stand up and say, okay, we messed up, which is to be expected, but worse than that, there's nobody on the other side trying to really nail down, hey, you lied about this, you got us into these wars, you get all of this kind of stuff. It's just kind of, well, that happened, and we messed it up from the beginning, we messed up the end, and that's just kind of how we do things. And it's just like, how am I as a 32-year-old man supposed to see that, and after all of what I've seen over the past 20 years? And how is somebody who is, in the next generation, who was born into this, who maybe was a young child on 9/11, or maybe not even born yet, and this is the world that they've been brought up in? How I don't again, it comes back to, how do you put your faith in this establishment that's done all of this for as long as you've been alive? Where is the not even cynicism, but skepticism, that maybe these people who have let a war go on for 20 years, and let all of our people die, and drone strike like it's nobody's business, innocent civilians on either side, and all of this kind of stuff, yet still we should give all of our power to them, let them decide what the truth is, let them decide what our medical choices are going to be, all of this kind of stuff. I just don't get it. And I wish I did, because I think that I could be somebody who is able to articulate the disparity, and okay, you think XYZ, and it's actually a little bit closer to ABC, and maybe the message that you're hearing from the other side, the alt-right, as not you, as you would call them, the message that you're hearing is this extreme thing, but those people are also hearing from your side that what you think is really extreme, when it's not really that extreme. It just you know, as you can see from this New America idea, can lead to all of these things. And so, like, you know, just the basic concept of not wanting to be racist is a good notion, but when you put that above being just a rational human being and judging things on whether or not they really are racist and not just calling anything that you don't like racist, then it lets the you know it I think it primes your mind to not have to think about these things because everything that's put out supports that original position that, oh, we're, you know, the government's doing a good thing. They want to help people who are sick. They want to stop racism. They want to help minorities. They want to do this and that. When that is just not the case. That is what they're telling you. Yeah, but that's just not the case on either side. And one side is at least being a little bit more upfront about what is going on, while it seems the progressives are like we've said, so convinced of their ends that they will engage any means necessary to get there. You know, I think it's I probably got it from Tim that, you know, most moderates and conservatives are aware of the liberal mindset, whereas the liberals have more often have no idea what the conservative position is on any given issue.
I tend to agree. And I think you actually hit the nail on the head with one word, and it's one that needs to be driven home, which is accountability. And I was raised in a generation where we held people accountable. So when we had, you know, the Iran-Contra affair, they hauled Oliver North up in Congress. It was public hearings. It was embarrassing for the president. It was, you know, everybody got their quart of blood out of it, you know, and that's okay. Because you know what? He got caught doing something he shouldn't have been doing. The president was aware of it. It was exposed. Everything was good, you know, and there was a level of accountability that followed. I haven't seen a lot of accountability in recent years, and my biggest problem, I have a lot of friends who are in the military, and I talked to them when Afghanistan was going down because a lot of them have served over there, and they're like, they all had the same position. We needed to get out of there. We should have been out of there 2 years earlier. We needed to go. The question was, how did we go?
Right.
And the way we went was an absolute mitigated clusterfuck. It just was.
Yeah.
And there's no escaping that. You can't spin that. You can't say, well, and I've heard from liberals going, well, if Trump had done it, it would have been worse. You don't know that. You literally do not know that. It would be different. We can all say it would be different. I can't even say it would be better. It would have been different.
I mean, even to that point, see that this is a perfect example of what I'm talking about when we're talking about good faith, because that's a genuine good faith way to approach the issue. That, okay, maybe, but you know, there were clear plans in place that did not include leaving the was it the Kabul whatever the airport or
Bagra, yeah, they abandoned Bagra Air Base
yeah,
and went to the Kabul airport, which was a highly indefensible position.
and that was never part of, from what I understand, there that, you know, the plan to get out was from Trump, and the plan itself was not what was enacted, and it seems to be a simple matter of Biden just didn't want to enact Trump's plan, and so he switched things up so that it was his plan, and then it got all discombobulated from there, and that's a lot of speculation, but the point the point is, they, you know, the typical progressive that we're talking about, and of course it's not all, we're talking on balance of probabilities, and there's progressives out there who are in good faith, who will argue in good faith, believe this stuff, all of that. That's not what we're talking about. If you're one of those people, then we're not talking about you. We appreciate you. But the other people who subscribe to your ideology tend not to want to engage with reality, as I've been saying, in the fact that we had a plan, and if that plan had gone to as it was planned, then it is reasonable to say that it would have been better under Trump. And so that's something that if things went the other way around and things were not perfect, which how could they be after a 20-year war? But if Biden had enacted Trump's plan and it went better than what we saw, again, it still wouldn't be perfect. I'm sure there would be casualties and all that stuff that comes from leaving a war you never should have been in the first place. But these same people who are not, while you're willing to say, okay, maybe Trump wouldn't have necessarily been better, those people would not. Those people would put everything on the fact that it was Trump's idea. Do you see what I'm saying? That it's
Oh
not.
yeah.
Their
framing is shoot, the messenger's faulty, so everything that the messenger says is faulty, and it doesn't. It's a logical fallacy, is what it is. It doesn't follow logic. And everybody I talked to said the same thing. They're like, we should have been out of there years ago. The way we left was a disaster. And to your point, which you used the right word, which I really appreciate, which is I want accountability. And that's what all of us want. My thing was, somebody needs to lose their job. I don't care if it's I don't want Biden's head unless he did it. I want to just know who made the stupid call. Okay.
Well, we know it's not Biden.
Well, I don't know. I don't know if it is or not, but I want to know who made the stupid call, and can he lose his job or she lose her job? I'm in favor of it. Somebody's head has to roll. And
cue the leftists coming in and say, see, you do engage in cancel culture and you just only want it on your side, when clearly we're talking about two different things. And somebody being fired for messing up a military operation that ended the way it did is not the same thing as digging up 10-year-old tweets from somebody who said something not so great and not letting them apologize for it.
Correct.
That's clearly
this
not
is
the same
about
thing.
You had a job to do. You are employed in a job. You have a responsibility. You screwed it up. If this was a corporate job, if we were working in the corporate world, and I used to work at Ernst & Young, the accounting firm, if I screwed up a project on this level, at this scale, I would be fired. And I know that. That's part of the thing clicking in the back of your head. That's why you don't make stupid mistakes, because you're like, I don't want to be unemployed. What I saw was we made horrible mistakes. And it was last week they announced finally they'd gotten the last Americans who wanted assistance out of the country. I'm like, that's 60 some days late, but okay, wonderful. You did it. But don't be patting yourselves on the back. I still want the guy or gal who put together this plan and ramrodded it through and approved it and said, this is the best way for us to do this. That person, and I don't care who it is, has to be held accountable for it. I'm not saying impeach Biden. I'm not pushing that. I'm not saying, that due process isn't followed. But I got to be honest with you, you screw up, you need to lose your job. And it sends a message to everybody else to not screw up.
Right.
But if no one loses their job, if there's zero accountability within the government, then you get mediocrity and you get, marginal things, because we didn't fire the last guy. They're not going to fire me. And I can do whatever I want now.
Yeah, and it just by and again, it's to somebody who may not agree with what we're saying, and we railed against wokeism and cancel culture, and now we're talking about somebody being fired. Aside from the obvious comparison I just made, again, it's not necessarily about okay, who did this? Now we want to punish them because we want we want our pound of flesh, but something happened, and we want to make sure it doesn't happen again. And so that is, a deterrent, that if you do something that you will be held accountable, that's a reason not to do it. Something bad, obviously. And it's just not there.
Yeah,
And
it's an amazing state that we're in, that there's nobody screaming for that.
yeah,
And I will say, I think to a certain degree, the conservatives tried to do an investigation into it, and everybody pointed the fingers at everybody else. And so they never could find, to me, I think they missed an opportunity, because they should have just said, look, we want the name. Who authored the plan? And if it was 5 guys sitting in a room who came up with that idea, then give me their names. I can take multiple, but they need to be held accountable for what they did. People died as a result of this, and those families deserve to know who was the person that made that decision. They just deserve it. And it's weird that there's the level of accountability. To your earlier point is, well, you should just trust the government. The government knows what's best, so don't worry about it. We have this all under control. And I'm like, I don't feel under control.
yeah. And there was that quote from the guy from the H3H3 podcast, Ethan Klein. He's like, he was commenting on something that Crowder was doing about the CDC, and he's like, dude, we've got like entire government body for it. You don't even got to think about it. It's like, that is the problem. That is the problem. Like, that you think that it's so stupid to be questioning. Oh, you're not a doctor. You're not a politician. These people are the ones that know. It's like, they're just people. You have this reverence
Yes.
for somebody who lives in or works in in the Capitol building, but they're just people with their own desires and their own narrative, and they're looking out for their own self-interest. And as a politician, for that should be in line with what the people want, because that's how the government should be set up. But we've known for a long time that it's not really like that. That it's money and popularity and charisma gets you that power.
Well, and the way the media reports it and omits things is important. During Trump's first impeachment, I actually got a pass to go down and watch the Senate trial
Oh, cool.
live. I didn't want the C-SPAN version. I didn't want the MSNBC or Fox version. I didn't want anybody telling me what was happening. I live outside Washington, D.C. I got a pass from my senator, and I went to the trial, and I sat there for 45 minutes or so and watched the actual trial. And I came back, and my wife was like, well, what was it like? I said, well, it's great because
Yeah.
it's a moment in history. And as a historian, I totally appreciate this. But I
There.
said, if the American people had seen the crap going on that wasn't on camera, the people passing notes to each other and whispering and laughing while testimony is being given, clearly not focused on what's happening. And I include the prosecutors table where they were just joking around. And when the defense was talking, they were just cracking little snide jokes about it, etc. But they're not on camera. When they're on camera, they look very dignified. And
Right.
if
Right.
people had seen that, if they had seen Mitt Romney nodding off in the back row, if they had seen some of the stuff we saw, I think people would have formed a very different opinion of our elected leaders. But it's very encapsulated. It's very packaged for us. It's presented in a way so that you think they were all sitting there hanging on each word that was being said, that they were very in tune with that. No, they weren't. Their little pages were floating in and out of there, bringing them water and running messages to other people. And it was a joke. It was
Checking emails,
embarrassing.
scrolling Facebook, all that kind of
No, they
stuff.
didn't have that. That was good. But a couple of them brought books, and I was like, I'm hoping it was a law book. I keep telling myself it had to be a law book, but I was disappointed in our leaders, because I was like, look, if you came in with a preconceived notion, I get it. You owe it to the president to pay attention to what's going on.
Mhm.
And I think if they had used a wide angle lens during all of this, the American people would have formed a very different opinion as to what was presented and how it was evaluated. And it was frustrating. And I'm a person that I don't sit on the sidelines. If I get an opportunity to go and see those people in action, I will go and see those people in action. I want to know that they're doing their job. And I was I sent a letter to my congressman saying, I'm very disappointed in you. You know, your behavior during this was not appropriate. Never got a response back other than, hey, if you're welcome, you can send a campaign contribution too. Yeah, which I get it. They're politicians and they're in there for life. So
Yeah.
yeah,
So
we've got to
speaking,
get better at getting people out.
yes, definitely. And I think you know, a lot of people have been saying that that was one of Trump's biggest blunders, is not the, you know, the brash attitude or anything that like that, but not firing the people who should have been fired. And he fired a bunch of people, but he ran on, you know, drain the swamp, and yet the highest paid government official has ruined all of our lives, and Trump could have gotten rid of Mr. Droplets very
Ah,
easily. But speaking of trials, I figured, you know, that is a you like that segue? You
it was
know,
good. I think I know where you're going too.
I've been, you know, the Kyle Rittenhouse thing was really the tipping point for me. As you know, before that, I would have still cringed at the concept of considering myself a conservative. And then when, you know, the whole thing with Jacob Blake happened, and then the subsequent riots, and within minutes we had footage of what happened with Kyle. And you know, I learned my lesson with George Floyd, that, you know, footage can be very damning, but it's not necessarily the whole story. And that wasn't necessarily the case here. The footage told exactly what the story was. And you know, I put out a post a couple days ago, after Kyle testified, and I was like, if you think that his breakdown was fake, here's a list of things that you don't understand. One, acting. Two, mental health. Three, PTSD. And you know, a whole bunch of things. And a couple people were like, "Oh, you're just an idiot." You know, I don't know. It was like, did you, how much of the trial have you been watching? It was like, well, I saw what he did. Like, okay, well, then I've been following the case since it happened, and I've been watching the entire trial. So kind of going to refer to my own knowledge here. But again, it's being packaged as, I mean, even there was even a Ben and Jerry's tweet that went out that was condemning the justice system for race, and it was like, you see, what if it was, you know, when someone goes out, and if it was a black guy who killed three white people, then it would be so much different, implying to those who don't know any better that Kyle killed three black people. And that is just, it's not a lie, but you either, to say something like that, you either have to be so far removed from the reality of the situation, or you're a bad faith actor. And it's coming to again, I'm coming to the conclusion that more and more and more people are becoming these bad faith actors, and not just the midwits who are smart enough to understand, you know, the alternative narrative, smart enough to hold these conversations, but not quite, you know, not they're off a couple notches. And so what, you know, how familiar are you with the case itself, the trial itself? Have you been following it?
I have been following it, and I follow it for a few reasons. It- I think it's an interesting perspective on. To me, what's on trial here is your right to defend yourself,
Right.
and you know, if they remove that right, if they decide to, you know, slam down hard on him, which they very well may, depending on what the, you know, I haven't seen today's footage of the instructions to the jury, but they may come down hard on the guy. If they do that, then there's this implication of you can't defend yourself when there's rioting going on, which I think is a mistake. Personally, and this is just me talking, nothing legal, because I'm not a legal expert, especially in the state of Wisconsin. Okay, could be real clear on that. I don't think he needed to be there. I think the fact that he was there was a mistake.
Definitely.
His mother shouldn't have let him go. Whatever, he shouldn't have been there. Did he have a right to be there? Absolutely. Legally, he had a right to be there. Should he have been there? No. Um, the concept that somebody is running up to him and sticks a gun towards his head and he shoots them, and that other guy's not tried at all or charged with assault, because
Right.
with assault you don't actually have to inflict harm, you have to have the capability to inflict harm. It was ridiculous. It's also very telling too that they immediately began telegraphing earlier or late last week, we're going to mobilize 500 National Guardsmen in case he's found innocent. And I'm like, you've just kind of set the stage for a mistrial, because if the jury heard about that, the implication is, well, the government believes he's guilty. I think the case was thin, and I asked myself time and time again, if I was, regardless of my age, forget the age and everything as well, if you were in that situation and you had a weapon and you saw a rioter running at you with intent to do harm, what would I do? And my reaction would be, I would protect myself.
Mm-hmm.
Now, it's a tragedy that these people are dead. I'm not going to crawl through their past histories and run-ins with the law, because that's irrelevant for what happened
Right.
at that moment.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
He didn't have that data. He didn't know X was a child molester or whatever. I've seen so many things out there that I haven't been able to verify yet, so I don't want to say that. But I'm just saying, as a human, as a man, if I was there, 59-year-old guy on the street, and I had my AR-15 and somebody was running towards me, especially one aiming a gun at my head, I got news for you. Trigger's going to get pulled. And
my favorite part was when they had Gage Grosskreutz, the guy who got shot in the biceps. He was on the stand, and this is supposed to be the prosecution's star witness. And besides testifying that, the prosecutor asked him, so it wasn't until you lifted your gun and pointed at Kyle that he fired upon you. He's like, that's correct. I'm like, okay, well, what are we doing here then? But also, the fact that he is suing Kenosha for $10 million in damages in civil court. The defense brought up like, hey, this is this will go really well for you if Kyle is convicted. And he gave this little smirk. And I mean, what a terrible example of prosecuting. I mean, just all around to choose this guy. And one of the funniest parts was he was stumbling over. He didn't like the way that the defense was saying you were chasing after Kyle, and he was like, no, I wasn't chasing. And like, you were running. Kyle was over right after he shot Rosenbaum. He was running away towards the cops, and Grosskreutz was following behind him, filming him. And at one point he turned around, and then one point he turned and went back to Kyle, and that's when we saw him. We saw everything go down. And so the question was that at first, when he was first running after Kyle, he was like, "Who are you? Why did you shoot that person?" or whatever. And Kyle said, "I'm going to the police. I didn't do anything." And Grosskreutz testifies, "I thought he said I'm with the police. I didn't do anything." And so that means Grosskreutz was under the impression that Rittenhouse was working with the police. So then he turns around and points a gun at the guy, and Kyle's the one on trial. Like, what? I just, it's so backwards. I'm hoping there
I
is a
think
way.
the part we should all be scared about was the FBI drone footage of the riots. And I said, so how many riots did you get drone footage of? And why are we only seeing this come up to trial? If you had you're telling me you didn't have drone footage of people setting fires, looting, you that level of surveillance, which I'm glad we had. It's bothering me that it's selective as to who's being put on trial here. I think it's safe to say, you look back at the George Zimmerman trial too, George Zimmerman was wrong to continually follow Trayvon Martin. Absolutely wrong. But Trayvon Martin climbed on top of him and was pounding his head into the pavement. He didn't have any justification to do that whatsoever. If I had a gun, in a holster and had somebody on top of me pounding my head against concrete, I got news for you. I'd be pulling the trigger. It doesn't matter. It's not a race thing. It's not anything else. And I made that comparison with a friend of mine today and was talking about it. I said, I feel that's kind of how Kyle is right now. This is going to haunt him the rest of his life. You think this kid's going to be able to go on a college campus and not have ridicule, scorn, threats, things like that for the rest of his life? When Biden was running for president, he called him a white supremacist, for God's sake. This is something that will follow this young man forever. I don't know if to me, it looked like he was fake crying or whatever, but you know what? If I was on trial for my life, I'd be a blubbering baby probably.
Well, that was precisely what was behind my my post that I mentioned, that if you think he was faking, then he wasn't just, it's not just that he was crying. That wasn't what was happening. He was having some sort of panic attack and reliving the moment, and it was affecting. So whether tears were coming down his face, that's not, he wasn't just sad that something happened. That's not what was going on. And so to say, well, I didn't see any tears, which there were, by the way, but that it was very clear that the whole time he was very well spoken, very alert and on the ball, and even very odd questions from the prosecutor. I mean, for an 18-year-old, there was, he definitely could have been a little bit more what's the word? Just a little bit more obvious in the fact that, the prosecution is not, again, not coming in good faith. They're coming to convict you. And like when they're asking, you play Call of Duty, the video game, the first person video game shooter. It's like, yeah. It's like, isn't that the type of game where you have the type of gun that you had and you shoot anybody who comes at you? And he was just like, well, it's a video game and they've got all kinds of guns, and it's two people willing to, and so he did very good in that. But I still think it was a mistake for him to testify. I think I think enough people will have seen that breakdown and seen it as legitimate. But I think the fact that it's out there as something that can be perceived as fake isn't helpful. And then the way, prosecutors didn't do very many things well, but what they did do well was, throw the kitchen sink at him and trip him up and make him not seem as, as sure of himself as possible. And I have a couple tweets pulled up here. I don't know, I don't know how legitimate they are, but from Jack Posobiec, he was saying these are two slides from what the prosecution, probably right now as we're talking, is looking to put as in their whatchamacallit,
Closing statement.
Closing statement. And here we've got and so yeah, one of them was, look for the truth. Too many people see only what they want to see. Consider whether it is heroic or honorable to provoke and shoot unarmed people. Consider whether it is heroic or honorable to lie about being an EMT. And again, it's like it's almost as if he used being an EMT as a shorthand, that I'm out here to help people, not trying to, not like stolen valor, but just well, I'm not technically an EMT, but I'm out here to help it. It's just easier to say I'm an EMT. We all know someone like the defendant enjoys the thrill of telling people what to do without the courage or honor to back it up. Contrast this with Anthony Huber, the guy with the skateboard, who gave his life to save others. And there was
Oh
another
my
one,
gosh.
and it's just like another one here. What were the defendant's true motivations? Did he sincerely care about the car source? Never heard of it. Not even the owners protected it. What, like, they were grateful for him being there. He testified to this, that they were whatever. Was he genuinely interested in helping people? He ran around with an AR-15 and lied about being an EMT when he clearly testified that he brought it for protection. Not there to support Black Lives Matter or Jacob Blake. He was and so the next question: why was he there? Specifically, what he said, to help people.
Let me ask this question to that last point. If I was the defense, I would say, so why were these people there? This was a riot. Okay. I agree. He didn't belong as a 17-year-old kid. He didn't belong down there. You can argue, that whether he lied or whatever, that's a point you can try to lay to a jury, but you're trying to paint him as that he went down there to be a cold-blooded killer, that his intent in going down there was to shoot people and be treated as heroic. He has not done anything along those lines. He hasn't wrapped himself in a cloak of heroism. He's been a victim in this as much as the people he shot in some respects. He is never going to have a normal life as a result of those few minutes on the streets in Kenosha. And whatever the legal system does to him is really kind of the end in this. I've wondered all along, secretly, personally, I'm wondering if the prosecution has done such a crappy job kind of intentionally. In other words,
absolutely,
I'm required to prosecute this. If I don't, I'm not going to be able to run for office. In some areas they have to be elected as prosecutors. I don't know if that's the case in Kenosha, but I have to deal with these people in my community who are going to feel upset if I don't prosecute this. So I'm going to prosecute it, but I'm literally doing it in a way where I'm throwing softballs,
mm-hmm. Yeah, no,
and I wonder if that's part of what's happening here is, I prosecuted, I really tried hard, and we'll know if they get a hung jury and the prosecution says, well, we're going to go for a retrial.
Yeah, and yeah, I am totally in line with you there, because the idea, if you play back the events, this was again all in the midst of the Jacob Blake stuff, and I'm pretty sure the facts were out there about Blake's past and Blake's restraining order, and the fact that he had a knife, and he had the kids in the car, all this kind of stuff that made the police shooting a justified shooting. The clearly there was riots and everything was going on, and Kyle just became a scapegoat. And so that was the establishment's opportunity to do something that would be seen as on the side of that portion of the populace. And so for him to be on trial to begin with is political theater. And so once they're there and they see that they don't have a case, specifically when the ADA Binger, the main prosecutor, starts his testimony, or starts his direct prosecution of Kyle, first asking a really, I don't remember exactly the wording, but he it was like, did you intend on killing people that night? I'm like, no, like you didn't intend on killing anybody, but you purposely shot and killed these people, going over the same kind of question, that arguably badgering the witness. And then right after that goes into, so you haven't spoken up and told your story until now, and we've heard all of the testimony, and alluding to the fact that he is tailoring his story to the testimony. And the judge flips out. He sends the jury out, and he was like, this has been a matter of law for 40, 50 years. You should know this. And he says, you're right on the edge. You might be over it. And the judge says, this could be grounds for, well, I'll just leave it there. And so what I've heard from different, like Vivo Frey is a great YouTuber calls himself litigator turned YouTuber. Robert, he does a live stream on Sundays with Robert Barnes, who was originally part of the Rittenhouse defense, and I don't know exactly what happened, but and then there is some channel that had a bunch of lawyers doing a live stream watching the trial. And so when he did all of that, they were saying, between that and the Grosskreutz testimony that he didn't, that Kyle didn't shoot until he was pointing his gun at him, they were saying it needs to go to directed verdict, which is something I hadn't heard of before. And it basically just means that regardless of what the jury says, or rather, it just means that the judge can determine that based on the facts that have been laid out, there is no reasonable way for the jury to come to a conclusion other than not guilty, and therefore I'm just stopping this here and saying that. And so when he, I think the directed verdict was more on the Grosskreutz testimony, but the the freedom of, or the right to remain silent thing, where he was saying, why didn't you speak up your story? That's the first thing. That's the first Miranda right. You have the right to remain silent. And I think he was ready to say that's grounds for a mistrial by what's the word? Mistrial by misconduct, in which, because of what the prosecution did, now it makes it impossible for Kyle to get a fair trial. So it's a mistrial, but they can't bring the charges back. And so he just goes and says, and so the speculation that I've heard is, especially from, seeing how unbiased the judge is, and it seems like he's really wanting this to be a win for the justice system, and he wants to show that the justice system can work. So I think instead of going to the directed verdict or determining a mistrial, I think that he's going to let it go to, today would be the closing statements. He's going to let it go to the jury. And then if the jury does convict, there's the possibility that he steps in and gives the directed not guilty verdict after that.
It's possible. I think they've got to find him guilty of something. And to be honest with you, be it a weapons charge or whatever, I think they dropped the weapons charge, one of the misdemeanor weapons charges or whatever. But yeah, he needs to be found guilty of something, because he really didn't need to be there. I'm not saying he didn't have the right to. I get it, but when all is said and done, you step way back from all this at the 20,000 foot level. He's a 17-year-old kid going into what's known to be a combat zone. There's a level of, okay, you had some bad judgment, and something.
I agree with that.
A slap on the hand is definitely merited here.
And I don't disagree, but it's just the point that of all of the people for Kyle's wrists to be the ones that are being slapped doesn't make sense. And so what you're saying is definitely, what you're saying is definitely warranted, that even if you're not guilty of murder, you're still guilty of doing something that you shouldn't have been doing. But like you said, so did everybody else there, and he was not the one burning things down. He was not the one attacking people. And so if we're going to say he's got to be convicted of something because he was down there, well, then we got to bring everybody who was in any of these riots, and just for being there, charge them with something. And so
I agree. I 100% agree. This was, it's very, they keep going, oh, this isn't political, this is justice. And I'm like, if it's not political, then why aren't we seeing people who were in these riots being charged? There was arson committed there, and the stuff was filmed. I mean, it's like we have people's faces on film that did this stuff. We have arsons, we have looting that took place. We have numerous acts of violence that didn't result in death, but were clearly violent. So where are the prosecutions of those people? And to the guy that pointed the gun at Kyle's head, I'm sorry, he needs to be charged with assault. You don't, if I walk up to you on a street and I'm angry with you, you know I'm angry with you, I rush up to you and stick a gun to your head, you can charge me with you can have me charged with assault. I don't have to pull the trigger.
Right.
It's
Especially when you record yourself getting the person to
yes,
say, chasing after the person, so you're not, it's not an imminent threat, and having them say what you thought was, "I'm working with the police." I mean, I guess being wrong doesn't, you can't. There's no legal charge for that. But the guy tried to kill who he thought was a cop. The
right.
guy tried to kill who he thought was a cop.
The first lesson of firearms, other than don't put your finger on the trigger, is you don't point the weapon at anything that you have no intention of shooting. That
Right.
is, I mean, I've been through firearms training before, when I was in Cub Scouts, and that was the first thing was you don't ever point this weapon at anybody you don't plan on shooting, period.
Yeah,
You know,
that's been one of my my bigger swings in opinion in when it comes to like conservative and liberal stuff. I used to be super anti-gun. And I realized it was just because I wasn't anti-gun. I was just ignorant about guns and following that, like, oh, okay, I hear about this shooting and that shooting and that shooting and that shooting. So the guns must be bad. And it wasn't until I started learning a little bit more about the intricacies of what gun laws are and how things play out, and the level of crime that is reduced and prevented by civilians with guns. And then just the overall concept that when you're, especially in the cities, if you call the police, then you are effectively outsourcing your own self-defense and saying it's okay for this situation to be handled with deadly force, but just I'm not going to do it.
yeah.
And so when I saw it like that, and I still don't know anything about guns. I live in New Jersey, which is a not very gun-friendly state. I intend on leaving, as soon as I can. But I just bought this place, so I'm probably not going to be leaving anytime too soon. But I do, I want to get educated. I think that being a responsible gun owner and just understanding how these things, the physical guns, how they work, how the laws work, and all that stuff, along with the responsibility that is imbued upon all of us as American citizens by the Constitution, of somebody who should have this knowledge and should be able to use these tools, which guns are tools. We should be able to use them, and it's this whole thing is so analogous simply to cars, and it's crazy to me that now that I can see that, how easy it was for me to be blinded by just a narrative being pushed, and I didn't know any better, and I just got caught up in it. And now I just don't know that other people have the desire to parse these things apart. And it's not all, it's few bad actors and just a whole swath of people who just don't know any better.
That's true. And I've had this discussion with people because I'm very pro Second Amendment, and I'm pro in that I like, if I have to have the need to defend myself in this last year because of threats against my life, I had to have the need to protect myself. It's just that and when somebody tells you I'm going to fucking shoot you in the fucking crotch, or better yet, I'd like to set you on fire, you really kind of click and go, okay, I need the capability to protect myself if this person shows up at my front door, because they intend to do me bodily harm, or they
Right.
intend to do my wife bodily harm. If they're going to set fire to me, the chances are, they're going to be setting fire to everyone in the house.
Mm-hmm.
So you look at these things very differently, especially when you have a threat to you. And as much as I know about guns, which is quite a bit because I am a military historian, the concept of, well, this is an assault weapon. Well, it's the exact same mechanism in that weapon is in most of the pistols that are out there. It's the same physics principles that operate it, that chamber the round for the next, for a semi-automatic firing. What
Except those
makes it,
the assault style rifles tend to kill less people year over year. It's usually the
yeah,
handguns.
yeah, and people tend to they don't educate themselves. They don't get to understand. If you're trying to ban semi-automatic weapons and drive us back to the age of muzzle-loading muskets, okay, but bear in mind, there are times you have to defend yourself.
Yeah.
And this last year taught a lot of Americans that, yeah, I need the capability to defend myself, that
Yep.
things are happening in my community and people are bad actors, as you said. They're out of control and they're doing things that could put me in danger.
And
So,
even if those things are dangerous, but they're in line with what the establishment wants, then the police are hands off. That's how we got the whole Rittenhouse thing to begin with, because the police were not doing their job.
yeah,
And, the leftist position as well, we have a right to peacefully assemble. It's like, yeah, okay, what's your point? That's not what we're talking about. We're not talking about a peaceful assembly. We're talking about widespread riots.
right.
And, there was, I remember when, in Portland, I think it was Trump sent out the National Guard and was they were quote unquote rounding up protesters, and it's like, well, yeah, they were again burning things down and all of this stuff, and the level of mental gymnastics that people will go through to justify that, but then turn that around and now it's somebody is imminently threatening your life, and you're a horrible white supremacist for enacting. And I mean, again, I was one of those people who thought that semi-automatic was like the burst thing in the video games where you press it once and it
Yeah.
sends out three. That's what I thought. I didn't know. And so I was like, why? I would be like, why do you ever need a semi-automatic? Blah, 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 blah. Like, which now I understand is just a stupid question and also is irrelevant because it has to do with rights and it doesn't have to do with personal needs. The fact is, a right is a right, and if I have the right to free speech, if I have the right to own firearms, then it doesn't really matter why. It doesn't really matter why I want to say what I want to say. It doesn't really matter why I want to have a gun. I have the right to do it, and I don't need to justify that to anybody. That's that's the point. And
Well,
yeah,
that's what somebody told me. The way they posed it to me in a question, they said, "Why would you ever need, 20 round magazine, for your weapon?" And I said, "In a free society, I don't owe you that explanation.
and a good
It's none
and
of your damn business why I
right.
think I need it."
And that reminds me of a Bill Burr, the comedian Bill Burr, one of his bits. And he was talking about getting a gun, and he was almost about to do it, but he's got his liberal wife and whatever. But the whole the whole point that of the joke was that you want to get. He was talking about getting a shotgun, and he was like, instead of a handgun. And I was like, well, why would I want that? I don't want to, take down the whole wall. And the guy in the shop was like, well, because you're going to miss a lot. In the middle of the night, it's dark. There's so many things are happening fast. You're not going to be a marksman. And so if there is 5 people coming to attack your home and you've got 10 bullets, then that's not a very big margin of error. And
Yeah.
even if you know what I mean. So it's these arguments, they sound good if you're uninitiated. And the saddest thing to me as an atheist is that before I would say before the between I would say the Obama years and up until the lockdown era, that the religious right was not a threat to me, and I use that term threat very lightly. It wasn't a threat to my way of life and stuff as much as it was before that. And when the religious right had much more steam, and it's so disheartening because it gives so much credence to the religious argument that that atheists are heathens, and without the religious morality, you get all of the things that we're seeing, all of this postmodern type stuff. And while I don't disagree with you've got to really parse it down to the values themselves. And I think the values that most people get from religion are absolutely the values that I espouse as just a secular moral person. And one of my big things is that tying morality and spirituality to specifically dogmatic and religious language is it hurts the culture, because it again makes it it creates a dichotomy where either you're religious or you're an amoral postmodern heathen, and that's just not the case, because most Christians are not fundamentalists who believe every word of the Bible and follow it to a T and never wear two different types of cloths. And how many Bible quote tattoos have you seen? And it's like, you have already decided that you don't believe this as it's been given to you, and you've used your human rationality to determine which parts of it are good and which parts of it are bad. And that is not what Christianity is. But because you tie yourself to this, then you create or rather you destroy the vein where secular humanism and having values that align with the good parts of the church but aren't tied to the bad parts. That is what we need. And because we don't have that, then I fear that this reversion to religion being the only game in town for having this moral framework is getting it's becoming more popular in general from people who may not have been super religious and may not have been super spiritual. And again, because there is no real path for unless you dig into moral philosophy and things like that, then you have the church who's setting this all up. And if you don't go to church, then you just don't have it. And if we can, again, decouple the language and not make it about, God and prayer and these things that we don't have, that don't align with physical reality, but they're still good. We don't need to throw the baby out with the bathwater. And we can, as a sophisticated scientific community, we can say, okay, the evidence for there being a conscious being outside of our physical universe who can reach in and affect our universe and all that kind of stuff is probably not there. However, there's some stuff that appears in the Bible and elsewhere that are really good, moral, it presents a moral framework, and we can take that. And if specifically on the left, I've seen so many of my friends who I used to get, share a lot of perspective because we were all atheists, because religion and because that the specific beliefs are tied more to the right and the conservatives and the Republicans. You're not going to get somebody who doesn't believe in God ever to go back to that. And so if you want these people to have the values, you need to be able to present them in a way that's not tied to this literal fantasy. And I don't know if you are a religious man or what you're.
It's a strange area. My wife says I'm more spiritual probably than religious. That
Which
she's
is how it
like,
should be.
and my thought is this: I have not attended a church service probably in 15 years. I don't have a church. Okay.
Do you call yourself a Christian?
I do, but what it really is, what I'm saying to your point is I adhere to many of the values that other Christians do, but also other atheists do. I'm not drawing the distinction that only the Christians have these values.
Mhm.
I believe that you should treat people the way you want to be treated. And I think that would solve a lot of this cancel culture stuff really quick. If people said, well, how do I want to be treated versus how someone else is being treated? Wait a minute, I'm kind of crossing that line. I think that in many respects that, I think I follow the basic fundamentals of the religion, but I don't pray. I don't, I don't I've read the Bible, but I read it from a historical perspective. I wanted to read it because my grandfather said, you need to read this. And I looked at it as a historical document and found it really twisted and lacking in some areas. But I also found that some of the lessons in there were good lessons. But just as the same could be said about Aesop's fables,
Right.
offer good moral lessons in some cases. And so, to me, I think the real key is you have to find your moral center, and your moral center starts with your family. And that's where you're going to get your best values. And if they get theirs from religion and that helps that reinforce that, then that's okay. I think the key is, from my perspective, I'm seeing more and more of a push for the government wants to define what the morals are. The
Right.
government wants to tell you what your values should be, and that scares the crap out of me. So to me, I'm less about where you get it from, except with the exception of, I don't think you should ever have the government telling you, well, you have to, subscribe to diversity and inclusiveness. You have to do these other things. You have to always consider X, Y, and Z when you do things. I don't think the government has a role in that. I think
Absolutely.
government is blurring the lines more and more with religion, and determining that they're going to set what the moral values are. And that's why there's so much pushback. They don't understand basic change management principles, and they're creating their own resistance. And to me, am I a Christian? Yeah, I consider myself a Christian, but it's mostly because, when I was raised, that's kind of what it was. But when you get down
Right.
to it, I think my wife is closer. She's like, you're a deeply spiritual person,
Yeah.
and
And that's
you have a strong moral compass. And I'm like, okay, well then I'm comfortable with that.
Yeah, and I mean that this is a whole other conversation, so we don't have to dive into that. But if that was the conversation we were having, I would nail down on that. And I don't. You're not a Christian. A Christian is what It's almost, I get the no true Scotsman fallacy that you're not a real Christian unless you da 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 da. But there's core tenets of belief that you have to have, and core there's rituals and all of this stuff that is prescribed by the religion. And if you don't do it, then you're not in that club. And so
Yeah,
I
I
understand the
guarantee you, no
shorthand.
church out there is going, Blaine's in our group.
Right.
You
And so I again, that's a whole other conversation. But I wish we had a label for the non organized religion spiritual person that's, oh, I'm not religious but I'm spiritual. That is again a tired line, and it doesn't really mean anything. And I think that it makes sense that we all have slightly different beliefs, but when we put it all into the same category, then person A who calls himself a Christian, who's just a normal person with good values, and person B who's the same way, they they just by calling themselves Christians support the Westboro Baptist Church doing what they do, and protesting soldiers' funerals, and gay people's funeral and all that stuff. It all falls under Christianity, and they are the ones who are adhering to Christianity closer than you are. And so that's, again, we don't have to
Oh,
dive
I
down that
don't
rabbit
just
hole.
I can't argue with you because you're right. Does that help? I can't argue
Never
with you because
hurts.
I just, like I said, there you have to look at to me, I always kind of view church membership and participation with, it's one thing for a person to say I'm a Christian and I'm a Methodist or I'm a Baptist or an Episcopalian. you almost want to go to the church and flip it around and say, so who are the Episcopalians in the community? Do those lists match up? Do the people who say I'm Episcopalian, would the church say, are you an
Mm,
Episcopalian? I
mm.
guarantee you there's no church out there right now that's saying, oh my God, Blaine's our guy. And that's okay. It doesn't mean I'm a bad person. If anything,
Right.
I adhere to most, I would say the 10 Commandments. I adhere to that, but I don't think of them as I don't think of them as the laws that I follow my life by. It's kind of common sense that I don't fool around on my wife or covet my neighbor's wife. It's just kind of smart to not do those things. I don't kill people. I don't, you know,
Right.
you follow, you're doing it and it fits in that mold, but that doesn't mean you fit in that mold. It means your actions are supportive of that. And that's
Right.
okay. I'm sure
Yeah.
if I looked at how you lived your life, it would probably be very much I could say, oh, look, here's how you align to a Christian church. But that doesn't mean I'm going to
Yeah.
go find a church that goes, oh, yeah,
Right.
he's our member, you
Right.
know.
And I
Uh,
think the bigger problem is not necessarily that that if you're not part of an organized religion that it's harder to you really have to build your moral framework on your own and from the ground up. And the fact that most people are not willing to do that, if they have either they weren't brought up with religion, or they are like me, who was brought up with religion and then came, had their own journey towards not believing specific things that disqualifies you from being part, or should disqualify you from being part of that religion. It creates a void. And so that's where this postmodern value system, or lack thereof, comes from. Is that, it's not that people are without the church, it's that people are without the community that comes with the church. Are without the values that are being espoused, and that aspect. And that is, if the church definitely absolutely provides that. But I just wish, there was another avenue.
I think to me, I think people need to find their moral center and adhere to it. And once they do that, you can call it whatever you want. To me, the label isn't as important as having the values. And you have to have certain values to operate in a society. And
Yeah, I definitely
we
agree
we've
that the values supersede the label, but I do, again, the label, it matters a lot. And again, we can agree to
well,
disagree
that's
on that
okay.
one. But
Well, we've been
so
going on for a couple hours here.
yeah, so I just want to, just as a kind of a conclusive question, where, if on a scale of 0 to 100, 0 being, this story is complete fantasy, and 100 being this is definitely an imminent reality that we're going to be facing, where would you put Blue Dawn on that scale?
Honestly, as I said, we haven't had the things that are the impetus to drive to this. Is it possible? Absolutely. Everything that I've tried to put in the novel is based on actual things that politicians have said and said we should be doing, and things that they have proposed. So from that perspective, I would say it's a 75 is where I would place it.
Uh,
That I didn't sit down and create a work of fantasy. I'm not George
right,
R.R.
right.
Martin stringing this together, and even he stole a lot from the War of the Roses. This isn't a complete work of fantasy. Um, how this would form up, the social quarantine camps, as a place to send uh, undesirable people for their own protection. I could easily see that happening.
Well, it's
When
already
we,
happening in Australia right now.
oh
They're
yeah,
already doing it. And
yeah. So I mean, is it real? Yeah, the tenets here are all based on things that everybody has heard of. So
it's fiction
would
until it's
could
not, right?
it's fiction right now, and I think conservatives reading the book are going to go, I've had a couple conservatives go, it really upset me to read the book. I read it and I saw all these things and it really upset me. And I'm like, well, good. Then you can have a dialogue about it. You can have
Mhm.
conversations about it. That's what a good piece of fiction should do, is spawn you to, it should have an emotional reaction. You should engage with it. The left is just kind of written it off, and I get that. And that's okay, but yeah, I'm not throwing anything out here that you guys haven't proposed. So,
Right.
sorry. I just don't know if it would ever come down the way it came down in the book, you know. So,
That's
and
fair. Okay.
that's fair. I don't profess to be some sort of Nostradamus here. I'm not George Orwell. I'm not Nostradamus. I just want to tell a really good story. And this was a wonderful framework to lay that story out in.
I agree. I agree. And
Cool.
I definitely hope this gets made into a movie. I would love to see that movie.
Well, I've already got book 2 is with the publisher. Book 3 is going through my revisions on my own, and I'm already 20,000 words into book 4.
Wow.
So the series kind of continues on. We get more characters. We get some of the old characters doing stuff, and you get to see more of what the country looks like and what a second American Civil War might actually play out to look like. Because I think a lot of people have a hard time thinking about it in terms of how that war might look, you know,
Right. And
and
that it's probably not going to look like the American Civil War from the 1700s, where,
yeah,
it's brother against brother in the streets shooting, that whole kinetic warfare versus fourth and fifth generational warfare. And
yeah,
so very
cool,
interesting. I thank you again for gracing the
sure.
platform. This is a very engaging conversation.
I
Um,
enjoy this. This is a lot of fun. We should just keep doing this every few months or so.
Hey, you're speaking my language. But before we do that, if there is anything that you want to plug, the book, your socials, any other things that you've got going on, please, the floor is yours.
Well, I'm available, and I openly engage with fans on Facebook, Twitter. You can find me almost on every platform out there. Feel free to engage with me. It's, you just search my name, you'll find me. And I want people to read the books and get excited about the stuff I write about. I want them to have good, passionate discussions. I think that's fun. And I look forward to everybody's feedback as they go through the book.
Awesome. And so we'll have, all the links for the book and your social media and all that stuff down below. Thank you again for coming. And I think you've got your finger on the pulse of what's going on. And hopefully, some of the people who are not the bad faith actors, but really the people who are caught in the middle, hopefully they can, get to a point where they can see that this isn't some conspiratorial, manifesto from a madman or something, but this is just taking what these people are saying and taking events and drawing them to their logical conclusion.
I hope that's the case. Calmer heads should always prevail.
Great. All right. Well, you have a wonderful day. Thank you so much again. And everyone, again, that is Blue Dawn by Blaine Pardoe.
Thank
All
you.
right. Have a good one.
Thank you. You too.
All right. Well, another episode where we didn't talk too much about the book itself, but I don't feel like we really needed to. I think the back, even though this is fiction, what we read in the back of the book gives a pretty clear picture of something. I mean, unless the book is completely different than what's on the back of the book, the picture that is painted in the synopsis is relatively clear in terms of what the overall themes and stuff are going to be. And so that's why I felt, talking more about other things and the politics surrounding the book itself would be more effective and giving us a better picture on what, who Blaine is, who this author is, what the perspective is for this story. And, you know, there is obviously a lot that he and I agree on. And there was a few things that we didn't. But again, great conversation. I feel like I stress it every time. And that's not, you know, that's on purpose. Having these conversations, especially the political and cultural ones, we need to be able to discuss things with people of an array of different opinions and perspectives and treat them as human beings and just be able to talk, just to be able to be, you know, have a normal conversation. That's it. That's it. And it seems so simple, and it seems almost trite to even say, "Oh, we need to be civil," and blah, 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 blah. But we do, and people aren't. And like I was talking about that post I put on Facebook about if you let's see, let's pull it up on Facebook about if you think Rittenhouse's breakdown was whatchamacallit, if it was fake, then here's a list of things that you don't understand. And let's do this real quick. Boom, 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 share screen. And so, yeah, for real, if you think Kyle's breakdown was fake, you're stupid. I've to the point of even that word, I'm so careful with the way that I type things on Facebook because they are so ready to ban me. But for real, if you think Kyle's breakdown was fake, you're stupid. Here's a, oh, I'm supposed to say list here. Here's a list of things you don't understand. 1, acting. 2, emotions. 3, grief. 4, PTSD. And 5, inflicting physical pain on someone when you didn't want to. If he was that good of an actor, he'd have been in Hollywood as a child star. Regardless of whether you think he's guilty or not, is irrelevant to my point. If you think that was a fake breakdown, you are not a smart person. And we've got someone here who is a common troll. Yeah. And then I got this. I'm an idiot, and I wish I didn't read this post. I didn't know what it meant, but he's a murderer, get over it, blah, 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 blah. And it just clearly, you have not been watching the trial. And you said, this is the kind of discourse that somebody I don't really know. I went to high school with this person, and you know, we were cool in high school, and some of his closest friends, at least from that time, overlapped with some of my closer friends at that time. But this isn't somebody that I know well. This isn't somebody I've seen in person in the last 15 years. And yet, without having seen the trial, without having followed what's going on, they can say that I'm an idiot based on what I've said. When I even posted in the post itself that it's not about whether you think he's guilty or not. It's about the breakdown itself. And this is the type of discourse that I get. And it's disheartening because I would love to have somebody who thought that thought that Rittenhouse was guilty be able to have a conversation like a conversation with me and Blaine, and not just that me and Blaine agreed on a lot of things, but like with Anirudh, me and him talk about things that we are on completely other sides, but we can have the conversation and be civil because we respect each other as people. And I don't know how else to say it. I just don't know how else to say it. Like, just be normal, just be a regular person and stop turning everything into a slight against you that, you know, your whole life is being invalidated because this person did XYZ. It's like, it's not that serious. It's not that serious. We're talking about serious things, but little parts of, I guess, microaggressions that we're talking about. Like, if you're having a conversation about something that is that important, then it shouldn't matter to you, you know, little tit for tat things that are going on. Over here, Mark. When he wants to join the party. It's, you know, what should be important is hashing out the ideas that you're talking about. So I don't know. I don't want to beat that horse into the ground. I think I beat it dead, at least for this episode. So I will leave you guys there. I definitely suggest checking out Blue Dawn, linked below. And I'm pretty sure that we will be seeing more of Blaine. He offered to come on and talk about other things, similar to the live stream I did last week. Will be in last week by the time you're seeing this, I believe. And I'm looking to get into more content like that, where I love doing this. I love being able to talk about people's books. I wish I had more time to read, and this is precisely why I did this podcast. But there's more that I want to talk about, and I don't want to sully the highlighting of the author by injecting my own opinions too much. I want to push back and talk about these things so that we can tease them out, so that you guys can understand understand it as well as possible, and that I can understand as well as possible. But the podcast itself is not really the platform for me to stand on my soapbox. And but I certainly have a soapbox that I would like to stand on, and maybe not all of you are going to love that kind of stuff. And so that's why I try my best to keep it out of the podcast. But if you take a look at the live stream, I'll be clipping it up. There should be at least one clip up by now, by the time you're seeing this. You'll see that the type of stuff that I want to talk about, and the type of things, the level to which I want to dive into things, is much different than what can be done in this podcast. So as much as we love the IDRYB setup, and it's not going anywhere anytime soon, so definitely like and subscribe so you don't ring the bell, so you don't miss anything. And there's just going to be additional stuff. And that's what the community that I'm looking to build is going to be based around. As I was saying to Blaine, that religion offers the values and the moral framework that people do need. It just comes with a lot of baggage. And so if I can at least do something to start a community that is based on just the values, without any of the woo-woo, any of the magic, any of the supernatural, any of the silly, antiquated bullshit that we just don't need anymore, then that is, I think, the greatest contribution that I could offer. I don't know how well I'll be able to do that, but you never know until you try. So that's what I am doing. So thank you again for tuning in to another episode of the I Didn't Read Your Book podcast. And thank you to our guest, Blaine Pardoe, talking about his book, Blue Dawn. Again, that's linked below, as well as his socials, my socials, and the support links. If you could see over here, this isn't as blue as it used to be. I had a little light that that went out. There's more costs. I'm going to be starting doing more live streams. So I got to sign up for StreamYard. Help me out. Help me out. Any little bit helps. Down below is my Venmo, my PayPal, and if you're really cool, my Bitcoin address. But you don't have to do any of that. I would much prefer that you don't contribute, but you do listen and watch, then you contribute and you don't watch. So if all you want to do is sit home and watch this and think about how cool it is, that's perfectly fine too. But it's only going to get better, and you can help with that. But until then, this is what we're doing, and I think it's going pretty well. Do you think so? Let me know down below in the comments. Thank you again. Remember, like and subscribe. Share this with somebody who needs to see it. Other than that, I will see you next Wednesday morning at 10 a.m. Have a good one. Peace.